Have you ever heard the expression, shoot straight? What is the bottom line here? Give me the no kind of BS assessment. Sum it all up for me. What's the one nugget of truth I need to know going forward? This is the Warrior Podcast 178, and we're going to talk about the bottom line of truth. All right. So the verse that we're going to look at today is going to be found in Colossians chapter 1, verse 16 and 17. And we'll jump right into it. Look, it reads like this. I got to find it. For by him, there we go, all things were created that are in heaven and that are on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or principalities or powers. All things were created through him and for him, and he is before all things, and in him all things consist. Now, who is him? Well, if you read the context of this book, chapter, verse, section here, it's talking about Jesus. So he is the center of all these things. They were created, everything was created for him and by him and through him. And they consist in him. Everything. Look around. Everything. Not only from a molecular level, all the way to a purposeful level, their intention, what they were designed for. And the thing is that sin ultimately is the non-recognition and application of that truth. That's sin. And so if you look at what we do, what we say, what we think, how we interact, if it's not recognizing that, if it's not acknowledging that, both in philosophy and practically, it's sin. That's what it was designed for, right there, black and white. Now, you just got to ask yourself, do I believe what that says? Is that true? Well, if you're a Christian, right, a Bible believing, the word is how faith came to me. Faith come by hearing and hearing by the word of Christ, God, depending on the translation. Then you are a receiver of his truth, and this is that truth. And so there is no denying it. There is no, there's no denying it. You either recognize this, acknowledge it, and move forward in that truth, or you don't. It's undeniable. It's the bottom line. It's the no bare bones or the bare bones assessment of reality. And I'll read it again. For by him, by Jesus, all things were created. Look around. Okay. That are in heaven and that are on earth, visible and invisible. Things we can see, can't see. Whether thrones or dominions or principalities or powers, all things were created through him and for him. And he is before all things, and in him all things consist. And he goes on to talk about how he's the head of the church and that ultimately all things that he may have the preeminence, that they're basically lifting him up. And that's glory. See, glory is this concept of pressing down, and in something being pressed down, it lifts up. Think about lifting weights. If I want to bench press, used to bench press a lot more than I can now, there's weight that actually pushes me down as I lift it up. And that is what all things are for Christ. They push him up as they bear the weight of that glory. And so we have to come to terms with the fact that there's nothing outside the scope of his authority and the purposes which he has created them for and sustains them for. It says that they all consist. So we can see that there's nothing outside the scope and reality of that authority. We can either recognize it or not. And so how do we know what that authority is? How do we know what the will of him who created all things are, what he wants it to be? His word. So if we're not getting into his word, if we're just going off our feelings, the Bible's very clear that we are being foolish. Because God doesn't transfer information, through osmosis into our brain, his will. He reveals his will through his statute and his word, prompted by Holy Spirit to understand and receive. Otherwise, there is no communication. So if someone tells me that they hear from God and they're not in his word, what God are they hearing from? Exactly. Where do they get this concept of God? Well, my God does X, Y, and Z. Or my God, I don't believe in a God that does X, Y, and Z. Or I don't believe in a God that does A, B, and C. Well, where'd you get the concept of this God? Just through osmosis? It smacked you in the head? Are you sure that you're not that God? All right, guys, as always, you are a warrior designed for glory. God's glory. It's what you're made for. And you consist in that. All right, as always, like the content, like, share, subscribe to the YouTube channel. I'll continue to put it out. God be with you. Stand and fight. Peace.